Hey, welcome back to Crime Time 911. I'm your host, Mel. Imagine deciding to go for a walk down a street that you've probably walked down dozens of times before. On your way to go shopping, heading to the library, or just going out to feed the birds and the squirrels, when all of a sudden there is a van barreling down the sidewalk towards you. In 2018, this is exactly what happened to 26 innocent people just going about their daily lives. Today, we're talking about the case of the Toronto van attack. I remember hearing about this when it happened. I was sitting at my desk at work, so of course I immediately started Googling to look for more information. Alek Minassian was born on November 3rd, 1992 in North York, Ontario, to his father, Vahi, who was from Armenia, and Sona, his mother, who was from Iran. His father was a software developer, and his mother worked for a computer IT company. Minassian lived in a large two-story house in Richmond Hill with his parents and his older brother, Haig. He attended 16th Avenue Public School, where he threw temper tantrums in class and isolated himself from other kids. It was clear that he had special needs. Minassian also attended an after-school program where one of his classmates said that he would hoard toys in the corner and scream if anyone tried to take them away. This was around the age of 10. By the time Minassian was attending Thornley Secondary School, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is now classified under autism spectrum disorder. He attended special education classes and began to make some friends. It's reported that Minassian was quite the class clown. He would make his friends laugh and making jokes about having Asperger's syndrome. The kids would often talk about video games. However, if the conversation turned to the girls that they liked, Minassian would sit quietly on the sidelines, never joining in on those conversations. Even though he made friends inside his special needs classes, he was relentlessly teased and bullied outside the classroom. He was nicknamed Chewbacca because he would occasionally make growling noises. They would poke at him, and he would try to bite them in response. As a child, I was also teased. Being a mixed child and being raised by a white single mom, my very wild and curly hair was most times out of control. Kids were really mean when it came to my hair, and I think it was probably because I physically looked white in all other ways. So maybe they just didn't understand why my hair was the way it was, because most other white looking children had normal curly hair or straight hair. But it really did affect me as I grew up. I was often very quiet, trying to blend in and not be seen. Bullies think that they're being funny, but they don't really truly understand how much their actions can actually affect somebody's life. Sometimes other students would pressure Minassian into talking to the girls in his grade. The girls would often laugh or turn away from him. In response, Minassian would whisper, "I don't like girls," over and over again. One classmate said they weren't even sure if Minassian even realized he was being bullied, while another said that Minassian told him that he acted the way he did for the attention. His mom would take him to Helpmate, which is a community service agency in Richmond Hill. They trained Minassian for a summer job at his mom's workplace as part of their life skills counseling, where he filed photocopied and shredded papers. At 15, his parents bought him his own computer. He became obsessed with the computer game Halo. He liked the game because all the players started with the same abilities, making everyone even. The online gaming community was great for Minassian because he didn't feel the social pressures like he did at school. Minassian was a natural when it came to computers, which is no wonder with the background his parents had in software development and computer IT. I'm sure there are a lot of kids out there that escape into the online gaming world because they feel safe. There's no pressure to be social other than maybe communicating game strategy. Everyone is essentially the same. However, as a parent, I believe it's important to keep an eye on your child's online activities and the amount of time they spend online as well. Eventually, Minassian would enroll in York University, where he would achieve a diploma in computer programming at Seneca's campus, which was close to his home in Richmond Hill. He did really well in his classes. He was even a research assistant at Seneca's Center of Development of Open Technology. Minassian also built an Android app to help people find free parking spots. Even though he did well in school, he struggled professionally. He landed a quality assurance developer job, but was fired after 6 months. He did co-op placements, but nothing ever resulted in landing a full-time job. Even though he struggled socially, he thrived online. It's really too bad that he didn't get more help to be able to integrate into the professional world. I personally feel that if he had had the right help and support, he could have been a successful young man. But on the other hand, maybe he still would have followed the path he eventually would go down. In September 2017, Minassian quit school one semester before he was due to complete his degree at Seneca and enlisted in the Army. Even though he passed the entrance exam, his section leader, Andrew Summerfield, was concerned and thought that Minassian should have never passed the entrance exam. He lacked motor control required to complete simple drills. When the recruits were ordered to swing their right legs without moving their bodies, Minassian wasn't able to do so without stumbling or losing his balance. He had no sense of time, often falling behind in exercises. He was unable to pack his kit, unsure of what he needed. Physical tics were distracting to the other recruits as well. Minassian typically sat alone, never made eye contact, and often looked at the floor as he spoke. It was clear to Summerfield that Minassian would never have qualified for a civilian firearm license. Why was he accepted in the armed forces? By the third week, Minassian came down with strep throat, which is common in basic training. When he didn't come back from the infirmary, Summerfield went to go find him. He found Minassian curled up in his bed. He told Summerfield that he didn't want to be there anymore and that he wanted to go home. After only 16 days in the Army, Minassian was discharged. His instructors and other recruits were relieved that he was discharged. They all feared what he would have been like with a firearm. I also wonder how he passed his entrance exam. He apparently even had trouble learning the hospital corners that recruits are required to use when making their beds. If he couldn't make his bed properly, how did he pass the exam? I've never been in the Army, so I don't really know what the entrance exam would consist of. But if you know more about it, perhaps you could shed some more light on this. Minassian ended up returning to Seneca to complete his final semester. During an icebreaker exercise, he had mentioned that he had been in the Army but left. When a classmate asked him why, he said it was because he didn't get to use firearms as often as he had hoped. It was noted that he didn't seem like he was joking. That's kind of scary in itself. Minassian was always by himself. He tried to make friends by asking classmates where they were going to complete their co-ops or how they did on tests. However, he was completely oblivious when they were in conversations with others, often interrupting them. A classmate said that Minassian would blink rapidly, squeezing his eyes shut when he talked to others or when presenting in front of the class. When the conversation turned to women, again, Minassian would turn away and shrug. As the end of the semester grew closer, Minassian still hadn't received a job offer. His calm and gentle demeanor began to unravel. One time, a fight broke out in class between Minassian and another classmate. Minassian shouted, "F you," and stormed out of the room. No one seemed to know what was going on with him. Minassian and other students would often use the messenger Slack to communicate with each other. On April 19th, Minassian would post, "Finally finished college. F you all and good riddance." The other classmates thought he was joking. One even responded with, "Ha ha ha, F you, good luck finding a job." At some point, Minassian became involved with an online incel community. Incel, or involuntary celibate, is an online subculture of mainly hetero males who were unable to find romantic or intimate partners, even though they wanted to have one. As a result, they often blame or objectify women and girls. As the incel movement grew, Elliot Rodger from California would post a video on YouTube in 2014. In the video, Rodger said, quote, "I'm 22 years old. I am still a virgin. Within those years, I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. I'm the perfect guy, yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men instead of me, the supreme gentleman." He would then go on to unalive two of his roommates, one of their friends, and then unalive two women outside a sorority house along with another male. He would then unalive himself in his own BMW. The incel forums blew up, calling Roger a hero, the supreme gentleman. Years after Roger's rampage, the incel forums on Reddit grew to 40,000 active members, and there were many more copycat groups as well. Minassian allegedly participated in a forum where incels would talk about being inappropriate with family members. I'm sure you guys hopefully know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say the actual word because YouTube and other platforms tend to suppress content that have certain trigger words in them, but picture the worst things that family members could do with other family members, and that's what I'm talking about. Incels refer to the men who are attractive and can get as many girls as they like as chads. And the beautiful women that want to hook up with the chads are known as Stacies. There is a whole language in the incel world when it comes to women, many terms which insult, degrade, or dehumanize women. I'm sure being socially awkward can really be a deterrent when it comes to some people finding a significant other. And I understand that it's difficult when you want to have a partner so badly, but no one seems to be interested in you. But I also believe that these people could have found someone if they really kind of looked in the right places, and that they were lusting after the wrong people. I also believe that society has put the idea of the perfect man and women in people's heads. You know, like if you look at most TV shows, movies, magazines, most of the men and women that are featured in these are often thin, fit, basically an image of the perfect man or woman that very few people actually fall into. In April of 2018, Minassian called a rental company to reserve a van, telling the person at the rental company that he was almost done with school and would be moving soon and that he needed the van to move his furniture. On April 23rd, 2018, 2 weeks after he originally reserved the van, Minassian went to pick it up. He wore black pants, a blue t-shirt, and a black hoodie. His hair was uneven and had bald patches, like he had gone at himself with the clippers. When the rental employee ran a background check on Minassian, it came back clear. Minassian was given the keys to the van. He then walked out to the parking lot. He got inside to turn the van on, then exited the van immediately, moving towards the street. Another employee in the parking lot watched Minassian with curiosity, observing Minassian frantically looking from side to side as if he was looking for someone. He then went back to the van. Minassian told her that he wasn't used to older vehicles and asked her to show him how to put the van into drive. The employee noted that Minassian looked nervous. His hands shook as he watched how to move the gear shift into the driving position. He reportedly sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. During this time, he posted a message on his Facebook profile that said, quote, private, in brackets, recruit, Minassian Infantry 00010, wishing to speak to Sergeant 4chan, please. C232-49161. The incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacies. All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Roger. Minassian then left the parking lot. This post was definitely a red flag, although I'm sure any friends and family that he had on Facebook likely had no idea what he was saying. I know I definitely wouldn't have, but I would definitely have looked at that and thought it was very weird. And depending on how close that person was to me, I might even have reached out to, ask what was going on, ask if they were okay, especially if, something like that. Like, it just seems like out of character, especially for him, because he was always said to be so quiet. Minassian drove towards Yonge Street. However, just south of Finch, he jumped the curb and plowed through pedestrians, unaliving one immediately. He would continue to drive down the sidewalk for several blocks, hitting anything in his way, poles, bus shelters, people. When he reached Mel Eastman Square, he drove through a cluster of people, then swerved back onto the road. He then turned on to Points Avenue, where he would park the van and stood outside, holding his phone like a gun. As the first officer, Ken Lamb, arrived on scene, Minassian would shout, "Unalive me! Shoot me in the head!" Lamb kept calm, slowly approaching Minassian until he threw his phone and fell to the ground face first on the pavement. Minassian was arrested within 7 minutes of the first emergency services phone call. It's so sad how many people lost their lives, and many more are mentally scarred from this tragic attack. People were just living their lives, walking down the street, maybe heading home, going shopping, or just going for a walk. Not one of them thinking that they would have had to watch for a van speeding down the sidewalk towards them. I think that it would take me a very long time to be able to even go out for a walk again if I was involved in any incident as tragic as that. The online incel forums celebrated, giving Minassian the nickname of Saint Alek. They chatted about how many beers they should drink per woman that had been unalived during Minassian's rampage. Oh, I can't even. These forums are they're too much. Maybe it's because I don't understand. It's just too much. It's too much. Anyway, Minassian's parents found out about their son's acts in the news the day it happened. They would hire a criminal lawyer to represent the family. I honestly have no idea what I would do if I turned on the TV to learn that my child was responsible for such a horrific attack on innocent people. That had to be a very difficult time for his parents. The 10 innocent people who lost their lives that day were between the ages of 22 and 94 years old, in which 8 were women. There were 26 victims in total. On April 24th, 2018, Minassian would appear before the Ontario Superior Court of Justice without a lawyer. He was shackled and wearing a white prison jumpsuit. He was charged with 10 counts of unaliving and 13 counts of attempted unaliving, receiving 3 more attempted charges on May 10th, and was ordered not to contact any of the alleged victims. The trial was initially scheduled to start on February 10th, 2020, but had been postponed to November due to the pandemic in Toronto. On November 10th, 2020, the trial began over Zoom. Even though Minassian had already admitted to planning and carrying out the act, he would plead not criminally responsible to the 10 counts of first degree and the 16 counts of attempted. On November 12th, a psychiatrist retained by Minassian's defense team reported that Minassian's autistic way of thinking was severely distorted in a way similar to psychosis, despite Minassian not technically being psychotic. Minassian and his defense team made attempts to claim that he was not responsible for his actions due to his autism. This upset autism rights advocates who were concerned that the trial would worsen the stigma towards autistic people. Minassian was found to be quite intelligent, scoring within the 92nd percentile in a verbal portion of an IQ test. Okay, so this really upsets me because they were trying to say that he drove down a sidewalk with the intention to unalive innocent people because he was autistic. There are many autistic people who are the nicest and kindest people ever. I have friends who have autistic children, and I can't even imagine the stigma they could have received if the courts had allowed this defense to go through. It's just disgusting that they even tried it. Ontario Superior Court Justice Anne Malloy had believed that Minassian appeared to be motivated by the desire for attention and recognition, and would refer to him as Mr. Doe so that he wouldn't gain any further recognition. She wrote, quote, "It is almost impossible to tell when Mr. Doe is lying and when he is telling the truth. Working out his exact motivation for this attack is likewise close to impossible. But nevertheless, I am inclined to accept the assessment of all the experts that Mr. Doe did lie to the police about much of the incel motivation he talked about, and that the incel movement was not in fact a primary driving force behind the attack." Justice Malloy would also reject the attempt to use his autism as a defense. March 21st, 2021, Minassian was found guilty on all counts, but sentencing was postponed until 2022 as they waited on a decision of the Supreme Court of Canada on whether prisoners can be made to serve unaliving sentences consecutively. June 13th, 2022, Minassian was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. What are your thoughts? Do you think that the incel movement could have been the driving force for his actions? I personally am not sure if the incel movement was the primary driving force, but I do believe that they encouraged violence against women because they blamed the Stacys for the fact that they were virgins or unable to get themselves a partner. I wish these forums had stricter moderations to prevent the talk of violence or harming others in any way, shape, or form. As always, leave your thoughts below. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you don't miss out on next week's episode. Thanks for listening to Crime Time 911. Stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always trust your gut.